We have actually taken on board lots of the things that you've heard about this morning, or tried to take those on board and put them into the sort of practical realities and the practical deployment of changing workspace in National Grid. Now, some of you, nice and bright. Actually, something else that did occur to me. Actually, I suppose we've got pretty high light levels actually in our offices, our new offices, which makes us honest actually. And when you consider what we do. Actually, that's probably not a bad link, actually, that, we look after your electricity and gas networks and all that sort of thing. So we're an honest bunch while we do it. So that's not a bad start. So let me just move on. A few pictures there. National Grid, we do high voltage electricity and high pressure gas in the UK. We do the same sorts of things actually in northeast US, so mainly in New England states. And we also run the gas distribution business from sort of North London through to the northwest. The other 4 gas distribution networks are in fact in other people's hands these days. National Grid's vision, of course, is all about connecting you with your energy needs today, and also thinking about how we're going to do that actually in the future. So we're a technical organisation, and in some ways you'll see that some of the things that I talk about, I'm an engineer by nature, I'm also an engineer by training. Actually proving things is really quite important to us. Evidence matters. I mean, we're a highly regulated business. We have to prove actually that what we're doing is good. And, actually from a value for money perspective, clearly it's important that, you feel that you're getting good value for money out of your electricity and gas supplies. So in some ways it fits with our model, and actually I sort of fit into this quite nicely. We actually consider the workplace to be a highly valuable part of our overall strategy. We're a very heavily asset-intensive business. Most of the asset lives that for the equipment that we install is 40 to 60 years, so we're a long-term business as well. Our employees, though, actually are critical to leveraging how we actually manage those sort of assets. In terms of real estate, the journey we've been on over the last few years, you can see actually on the graph there that the utility sector within what's called the MSCI property benchmark at the moment. National Grid was actually behind the mark as an average cost per person. The utility sector, interestingly, is actually the more efficient sector within the MSCI database. So actually we're sort of in the best position we could ever be in today, where actually we're the best, or we're better than the benchmark of the best part of the MSCI database. Clearly that matters to us because we have to talk to our regulator about it, and we want to be able to talk to people like you who pay your gas and electricity to actually evidence that actually what we're doing is the right sort of thing. Safe, reliable, sustainable, all of those sorts of things matter. So we build, the technical sort of nature of our estate is also an interesting and an important part of it. And actually trying to drive out waste, improve the environment, and actually make sure that our employees are as productive as they can be, were the sort of 3 things that I was trying to do as part of the change journey that we've been on for the last 3 or 4 years. Clearly, in my role, actually, if I've got happy customers, actually those happy customers definitely make my life a lot easier. So actually, why wouldn't I want them to be delighted with the workplace that they're in? I was also interested in the latter part of my talk this morning. Actually, we'll talk about actually how do we go about proving whether or not they're actually doing a better job, doing more output, more productive, and I want to actually try and evidence that, and so that was the exercise that we undertook. So that's where we started, pretty traditional, 10 square metres a person, max packs, 2000-ish type of style. You still do see it around today. I mean, increasingly people are moving away from this. And interestingly, when you move into the new environments, although actually we increase occupancy by at least sort of 30% or thereabouts, actually we put fewer workstations in, but we have a massive variety of settings. Light levels do matter, and also colour are the 2 things that we were really using to try and drive employee performance, employee productivity, and employee satisfaction. So we moved from that, and we moved into nice, bright, colourful sort of workspace. Lots of variety of settings. I think in some ways we did lots of work style analysis to try and understand what it was that people were trying to achieve through their normal daily work. As part of that work style analysis, of course, you actually identify, a desk with a chair actually isn't going to work for an awful lot of those activities. You need variety. You need different types of spaces so that people can actually perform at their maximum for the particular tasks that they're trying to undertake. So, real flexibility. We've moved from 11-ish square metres, 10 or 11, 12 square metres a person, down to the sort of 7 or 8 square metre person. That's sort of gross net internal, so that's all the circulation space as well. We've reduced energy by about 16%. You know, the introduction of better cooling fans, lighting, all of those sorts of things have definitely improved the environmental performance of the estate. The number of support spaces that we put in place, so that, you know, you did have the circulation space. Typically in the office, I mean, our Warwick office is quite a big office, 260, 280,000 square feet of sort of usable office space. That sort of building, you can actually put in massive variety. So we've got the sort of, we've got the classroom type of thing, we've got the breakout, the coffee space, we've got the auditorium, so, you know, we've got a little, you know, amphitheatre type thing, all suited for different types of activity. So we find all of those do get used, and they're available actually for the whole building and everybody that's in there. It was interesting when we started out on this journey. We used to give people 100 square foot per person, so that's what you'd sort of say, that's what you get. Actually, when we moved away from that, everybody was saying, but now you're going to give me only 70 square foot, you know, that sort of thing. That was the mentality of a lot of people. And of course, actually, it was quite the opposite. Actually, what we were doing, the floor plates are either 14 or 18,000 square feet. Actually, what we were doing, we were giving you 14 or 18,000 square feet to play in, because actually you could use all of it. You weren't tied to any particular space or any type of space, so you could actually get up, move around as you need to. We don't allocate desks, other than to very few people. So in that building there might be 10 or 20 desks allocated, and they're only the team hubs, the sort of neighbourhood centre. So it'll be, my PA for example is an anchor, so people know where property is. So it's a little bit of wayfinding, but not too much, and we have most of the wayfinding just on a map, and then you get a blob that sort of says that's where property is or where finance is. We have got, and I think we can say reasonably safely, that actually we have proved that we've got an 8% improvement in productivity as a result of the changes that we've made. So it isn't only about the physical space, the light, the colour, the design, all of that sort of thing, although we used that to drive that change that you heard about earlier. Actually, we also use change management. People are complex. We are actually, we are creatures of habit. We're territorial. So actually, everybody really wants their own space. And actually, it's about trying to change that mindset so that people see their own space as not just this little space that I'm standing on now. Actually, this room is my space, and it's a shared space. So actually, that was quite an important part of the journey, and change management and physical change together really does make some lasting change. And of course we wanted to improve our brand visibility, which clearly we did, and that is the brand actually of National Grid. If you go into a National Grid building today, you will see that sort of bright, vibrant, forward-thinking sort of brand. So talking about change, this was the plan that we adopted. Actually trialling these things is absolutely critical. We didn't just play around in this space, we actually were very serious about it. We put 250 people into a trial, and we ran that trial for 6 months to actually really knock it about. We had a 14,000 square foot floor plate. We put 242 people on it to start with. I sort of said, well, I don't know where this breaks. And everybody was up for this, and we talked to everybody. They knew they were in this sort of kettle, this experiment type of thing. We ended up with about 278, 280 odd people on that floor plate, and I remember coming in one day thinking, do you know what, I can't even sit on the floor hardly, because there wasn't anywhere to go at all. The point about it though was, in true engineering terms, you want to understand the parameters. So we want to know what good looks like, we want to know what bad looks like, as it were. So we pushed it till it broke, in effect. And that was quite an important part of that overall process. But then creating the plan, we did use design, and we really engineered the workspace. We really did think about how the workspace was going to work for people, because we understood what the people needed to do. And so it will be different for you in your own teams, but the knowledge worker is a complex sort of beast to deal with, and actually you do need to really properly think about it if you want to get the maximum out of them. And then delivering the change, 10-week programme, 10 10 different floor plates, it actually did give us an opportunity to learn. You know, we weren't brilliant at it to start with, there's no two ways about it. You know, we got better as we went through it. Today we've got, the whole UK estate is done, we've got 6,000 or 7,000 people in this sort of work style, and actually we've even taken it into some of our gas depots. So, you know, we've done a sort of a similar style actually out there in the field. And then of course actually another challenge is actually keeping it going. But an interesting statistic there is that actually we spend more on people's heads than we do on the fit out. Typically it would take us, you know, 10, 12 weeks to do the fit out. We'd actually work on people's heads for sort of 15, 16 weeks, which actually sort of says an awful lot about if you really want to get the best out of the product, as it were, which is generally how your business is going to perform, then actually, you know, you need your people and your property to come together. I think these are probably what I've just talked about. The stakeholder engagement piece is an important one there, I think. It isn't only about, you know, odd people who are willing to either listen or engage with you. It's actually about really doing some deep stakeholder engagement. All types of worker, ages, seniority. Really, you've got to cut your organisation up so that you are truly getting some great, you know, it's good feedback. They act as two-way conduits, of course. If you do good stakeholder management, you know, you can send messages down into the organisation, messages can come back to you. It's a very effective way actually of understanding exactly what's sort of going on out there. And then the last one there was, you know, we did really try and use design to stimulate people, to actually make them sort of wake up to, you know, this is actually a new place. And we've just opened our Strand office a couple of weeks ago. And actually it was funny, you know, 3 weeks before it was finished, you know, we did have the lights on. It was still a, you know, half built, as it were. But you know what? It was better up there than it was in the existing workspace. And so actually it just shows how, you know, if you use design and get that colour and light levels right, it can really stimulate great performance. So what did we get out of it all? In terms of, those were the three measures, incidentally. You know, it was about money, it always matters. It was about climate change, that I think increasingly matters. And to a certain extent, the climate change arguments for me are just so obvious that if you can save energy, you're reducing carbon, that's good for the planet, good for your kids and all that sort of thing. But it also, of course, saves money as well. So why wouldn't you want to do that? You know, there's a very compelling case there. And the other one, of course, is happy workers, productive workers, actually are less trouble to manage. You know, we love our customers, as it were, internally in National Grid, but, you know, if they're not happy, of course, guess what? My life, my team, you know, they struggle to sort of keep things on the road. So in terms of outputs, you know, we actually we used this as part of an estate strategy, so we actually consolidated, we've taken out about 250,000 square feet of the estate. We took out that quite early, and we used the smart workspace principles to actually increase capacity. As we closed things, and as we went through Warwick, we actually increased the occupancy in Warwick from around about 1850, 1900 people to today around about 3,000. So actually in doing that, of course, that's let us absorb, you know, people from building closures. So actually we've just moved them into the Warwick space. 16% reduction in energy, a lot more collaborative activity. It's harder for senior people, but it's much easier for teams to perform. Actually, team performance is better. There's much more collaboration in this type of workspace than you'll actually get in a fairly traditional type of workspace. Those accidental bumping into each other, getting decisions made, all of those sorts of things actually do drive team performance quite significantly. So we've got some great outputs there. The other thing, actually, interestingly, once you actually move into this sort of space, actually, you know, I wouldn't know actually how many people are in Warwick, to be honest, because people can come and go as they need to. We know there's 3,000 in there because we actually count bodies. So we have a counting system that's very simple, very cheap. It's done on infrared. So actually, as you come into a room like this, it would count you coming in, it would count you going out. So actually, we would get a real-time measure of actually how many people are in the building, and I can do it from my phone, so I can see actually if I've got problems coming up. So actually I can see how all of our estate is performing, the top 15 buildings. I can see how they're actually how occupied they are, and of course that helps me understand whether or not actually we've got opportunities or problems. You know, if we've got too many people in some of the places, do we need to remix it? If we haven't got enough people in places, why have we got it? So actually it really does help drive that sort of wider estate strategy. But then moving into our people, there's an awful lot of talk about productivity. We all sort of, it slips off the tongue very easily. You know, I've changed this and I've increased productivity by 30%. I mean, there are some, you know, very wild sort of, you know, assessments about actually how workspace does improve productivity. Actually, when you look at it, they're all just about people's perceptions, and they're saying that they're happier, they prefer a new place than an old place. Well, actually, when you look where we started, it's not hard to get people to say, actually, we're happier in a different place. But does that really impact their productivity? That's the point. And going back to the happiness things, you know, happy workers, contented workers, in a good place, liked, all of those things that if they come together in the workplace, you know, I think you can actually drive up employee productivity. And that was one of the things that we wanted to prove, actually. And we've done an objective sort of assessment along with ACOM helping us and also a leading UK university. We actually did do a survey, a piece of research actually around productivity. We identified 500 people actually to start with. This is probably the biggest one that's ever been done, I would guess, in the UK, actually anywhere I know about, to be honest. You see there's 345 perception surveys were completed. We did keep perception. It was quite important that we got people's views on things, but equally what we wanted to do was see how they actually perform. So we split this into two elements. Ask you what you feel about the place, and actually then go and complete some psychometric tests. And actually the second part of it, we've got 312 cognitive task responses. So this is quite a big cohort, this is. It irons out, it was done over, you know, the buildings were over a year old, so it wasn't, the newness factor had gone, so actually this was normal workspace for people. It was 4 buildings, so we took away the fact that, well, it might be just that building's brilliant and that one isn't. So we wanted to make sure that we had some pretty robust data across quite a large cohort of different type of people. So big responses, and actually when you look at the results here, they were the 3 tests. We did a creativity test, we did a cognitive flexibility, so that's a bit like the countdown one, you know, trying to work out words and things from a selection of letters, and cognitive reasoning, cognitive logic. Interestingly, when I was listening earlier, I thought, do you know what, no wonder we don't see any improvement in creativity, because our light levels are too high. I'm going to do an experiment. I'm going to put people in a dark room and do it again. Because actually, that might be the reason why, if you look at it, we didn't actually see any movement really in creativity. Which we thought we would, though. That's why we put the test in. We thought, actually, you know what, people are going to be more creative, because the space is creative. It drives energy and interest and all that. And actually we didn't, so we didn't see anything there. But the others, actually we saw some pretty marked improvements. So, you know, overall we believe we've driven up employee productivity by 8%, and we can prove it. So, you know, I think that for me was, in a way, the icing on the cake, because when you convert that into money, if you look at your salary bills and say, actually, if I've pushed up productivity by 8%, you know, you're not going to take out 8% of your people tomorrow. That's not what you're going to do. But actually, you have got some more latent capability within your workforce, and it might be that actually that mix can change over time. But it does add up to some big numbers. You add that to your property business case, and actually you've got a fantastic business proposition in effect. Interestingly, this one here actually about culture, and I think that Dame Carol talked on that. Actually, culture is, you know, actually I don't think it matters what you do in the workplace. If the culture's wrong, actually, you know, you're going to suffer. You need to fix that first to make sure that works. Clearly in this space we're going to try and redo some of this, test it again, see how it moves over time and all that sort of thing. I think we are in the vanguard actually at the moment of testing this and trying to put some real meat on it. We have got more to do though, and we'll continue to sort of monitor how things go. Just a few pointers for those who do run property estates actually. Don't forget your own team. Actually, if there's one big lesson that I learned, actually I didn't really look internally. I looked at my customer base and I did massive change management programs with them. And actually we did lots of work on the workplace. I didn't actually really look backwards and look in my own team and say, how are we going to manage this going forward? So some important sort of learnings there actually. But there's lots of things that do get impacted actually by this sort of change. And then actually our last project is our corporate centre that's just opened in the Strand in London. And that's been quite a challenging one. We've done it in a very short period of time. We've had some great collaboration actually amongst the team to get it done in the right sort of time. And you know, what we've also done in this space is we've used some of National Grid's sort of leadership development planning processes, and we've actually built some of the sort of the smart workspace style attributes that we're looking for in terms of visible leadership and all those sorts of things. Try and build them into the leadership development program, and actually it's worked really quite well. I mean, I put on the bottom here that it's quite nice to be able to work in harmony with HR. We do most of the HR work in truth in National Grid. You know, I do that in my property team actually with you know, our supply chain. But I think actually if you can get HRIS and property working really together, bring them together around work, around people, you know, actually you can start to really make some fantastic improvements. I think that's me just about done. So there we go. Thank you.
Thanks, Warwick.
I don't know how you did time.
Yeah, we're a bit short of time. So
Yeah.
perhaps we just have one question from the audience. I'm sorry we've got to rush a little bit, but I want to try and get the back on time as much as I can.
Hey. Just looking at the data, it all looks really positive about the people who've moved into the new office. But I'm sure you've collected a lot more than that. Are there any groups that within your organisation who remain sort of stubbornly attached to the old system of having their own desk, who perhaps are still struggling with the new way of working?
There aren't any teams, actually. It's interesting. We've applied this to our engineering teams. We've applied it to HR. We've applied it to legal. We've applied it to finance. Everybody actually has gone through the same process. So we don't have any particular teams that have sort of rejected it because actually we've got to sort of work together. And I think that collective and the change management piece actually managed that bit. You're right, though, to say that, you know, it isn't all rosy. In the sense that when you actually dig into the detail of this, you find that people really do dislike the lack of control and the lack of privacy that comes out of this type of working. Overall, of course, they're you know, everything is better, but there are elements in there that people definitely dislike. Going back to some of the people like legal, what we did though is, if you understand what legal people do, they read stuff an awful lot. So the quiet spaces are really critical, and we actually needed to put more in that sort of area so that they had greater sort of, you know, greater facilities in that sense for them. So actually doing the work style analysis is quite important. So there is a fairly vanilla solution. It is all the same, but we do flex it a bit to actually make sure that any particular team with a particular requirement actually, you know, that requirement is met.
Yeah, that's great. I think you're able to stay with us for the whole session. So if you wouldn't mind perhaps sitting at the coffee break and lunchtime, if people do have a question, would you be happy to take those questions then?
Yeah.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.